We are back with more NFL coverage, and a wide variety of things have happened. Nevertheless, we get straight into it with the Dolphins doing something that at least makes some kind of sense. They signed defensive tackle Zach Sieler to a 3-year, $67.75 million contract extension, with $44 million of those dollars being guaranteed. And when you look at his career progression, I think Ravens fans might not be all too familiar with this, but he was actually with that squad in 2018 and part of 2019 before being moved to Miami, I guess around the same time that Minkah Fitzpatrick was, to be honest with you. And in that time with the Ravens, he was certainly more of a rotational piece. He didn't get a crazy amount of snaps or game appearances like that at all. And he kind of just spent the earliest part of his career in Miami trying to develop as a sound player at the defensive tackle position. Now, obviously, with some of the other talent that they had, like a Christian Wilkins at the time and other elite defenders on that D-line, they didn't really need Sieler to step up all that much in his earliest years. But over at least the last 3 seasons for him, he's been durable, and he's produced at an elite level. He did have 3.5 sacks in 2022, but also had a career high in tackles with 70 and had 7 TFLs as well, along with 12 quarterback hits. Then in 2023, he put it all together for what might have been his most complete season as an NFL pro. Now, granted, this is right around the time he starts to hit his prime. And in that season, he put up 10 sacks, an interception, 4 pass deflections, 2 fumble recoveries, and 11 tackles for loss, along with 22 quarterback hits. He had similar production in 2024, although he did miss a couple of games last year. So with you seeing that consistency over the past couple of years and recognizing that he's an established veteran at this point, it doesn't hurt for the Dolphins to give him that money whatsoever. He's playing like he deserves that kind of bread in the first place. Now, again, the jury would still be out on whether or not he's considered an elite player at his position. But you can't deny that he's got the production to back it up, and he also has the versatility. Like, keep in mind that he had similar trajectory in 2024 while making a position change, because they actually had him playing on the inside in 23 and then made him go back to the outside in 24. And I'm sure that his snaps have been split up in ways where he's playing on the left side in some cases, and in other cases he's right in the middle of the defense as a pseudo nose tackle. And you still manage to break through that consistently and generate that kind of pressure for yourself on a defensive line that has the potential, but has been very injury prone, to say the least. All defenses in that situation during these games would be focused in on Zach Sieler and whatever it is that he's doing. Other players in that specific pass rush wouldn't really be focused on all too much, with Sieler contributing in that way. And to have that staple in the middle or the outside of the defensive line when everything else is just completely up in the air at this point, depending on how young these players are or how, again, oft injured they tend to be, you gotta be able to keep him there. He's definitely not being paid like a top 10 defensive player at his position. But if he can continue to contribute in that way for them, the contract is going to be certainly worth it. And it feels like, as well, they're going to be expecting that, one, because of the deal, and two, because of how that defense is constructed around him. Simply put, Like, obviously, the pass rush, even if they have their general inconsistencies, they're probably going to be the most sure unit on that front. We already know about every single situation that is facing that cornerback and safety core right now. We already understand that. And they are going to have to find themselves getting bailed out time and again by being able to generate pressure, which Sieler has been pretty effective at doing in these last couple of years. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But only time and health will tell. Though again, in his last 5 seasons, he's played in mostly every single game and has now become a legitimate starter in this rotation in that same amount of time. So, the sky could be the limit for him here. The NFLPA would hire David White as an interim head director. One thing to note about David White is that, according to multiple articles, including an article from Mike Florio of NBC Sports, he apparently was up for this position a couple of years back while J.C. Treader was trying to put his name in the running, I guess, and while the now resigned president was also on the docket for the position. So he is essentially just going to hold this for a set number of months, maybe a full year, I believe, up until the NFLPA can find their new director permanently. He could still be up for that, but he's going to have to show a lot of progress because, again, with them being found guilty on collusion in the NFL, it just broke a code between the players and, I guess, other representation in the league. And it is certainly going to take massive strides on his end in collaboration with both sides to ensure that by a certain point, if he truly still wants a job, that he has got the support of everyone in there and the trust of everyone in there. It's going to be like walking around eggshells to start out. I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be like walking on eggshells. Like, he's kind of got the experience because it has also been mentioned through multiple headlines that he used to do work with the SAG-AFTRA writing and production company. And they have been in their own situation for over the past few years with the writer's strike and such. So I guess he has some understanding of how to handle damage control and try to get massive corporations to shake back in situations like that. I guess there's something to it. But nonetheless, as soon as he would get hired, he would send out a letter/presser to all the people he's going to serve, and he would outline a few goals that his interim tenure in the position are set to potentially achieve under his guidance. In short, he wanted to restore player confidence, to address time-sensitive challenges, and to lay the groundwork for success under permanent leadership. Again, whether that be him or not. All those key points are exactly what they are. If you don't have the backing of the players, you're not even going to be considered for anything like this. If you can't show that you're getting major things done when it comes to legislation, when it comes to initiatives, whatever. If you're not showing that you can get that done, that just shows a lack of reliability on that front as well. And why would anyone on either side want a repeat of that? That's exactly how you have to approach this thing. So it sounds good, but again, these are just the first few days of his interim label. So he's got a little bit of time to just navigate the waters, look at the state of the association right now, which is honestly pretty shit at this point, and kind of figure out those points that you can exploit and try to hone in on to drive these goals into motion. That's going to be the key. Because maybe you don't accomplish all of these goals, but if you can't make that positive progression within the span of a year, I don't think that anyone would be giving you another look at one of the most important positions in just the general NFL organization. But he seems to have the credentials, so you'll give him credit for that. The Falcons would sign tackle Kaleb McGary to a 2-year, $30 million contract extension. Now, McGary is an interesting case. He is now 30 years old, and he actually is in a bit of a pickle right now because even though he's playing the right tackle position, since Michael Penix Jr. is currently left-handed, he ends up being the blind side blocker for that specific team. So it's pretty funky when you think about it. Still, McGary has been a solid piece for that offensive line for years. Maybe he's not considered in the upper echelon. I don't think that he would be when you compare some of the people in recent draft class even. Like, he might not be up there in terms of tackle talent, but he is one of their more reliable pieces. In all 6 of his NFL seasons, he's played at least 14 games or more, and he played in 16 games last year, while just holding it down on that side. The job they're asking him to do in this situation, to take on that pressure for a position that doesn't usually warrant it, can be a lot, and yet he's doing what he has to do. He only accounted for 4 penalties last season and only accounted for 2 in 2023. He doesn't have All-Pro recognition or a Pro Bowl to his name, but to appear in that many games and then know that the team can count on you at almost every turn. He played in 96% of the offensive snaps last season, and also got a pretty good number of special team snaps in. So if you can have a serviceable lineman in this day and age, you're going to take it. And the Falcons have proven with guys like Jake Matthews that even if you have I'm not going to say weaker, because again, McGary's still pretty solid, but they can afford to have an elite talent elsewhere. They don't need a line full of studs at the lineman positions. It would certainly help to have just a trench unit full of dynamic guards, centers, and tackles. But not every team is going to be blessed with that. And this is a guy who was a former first rounder in 2019. Late round pick. So you couldn't have really expected him to blossom into this generational talent. I won't go out on a limb and say that. But for what the team needs from him, he has exceeded all expectations. And so a $15 million a year deal, like, that ain't bad from Atlanta's perspective whatsoever. The Eagles would actually conduct a trade as they would get cornerback Jakorian Bennett from the Raiders and send backup defensive tackle Thomas Booker IV to Las Vegas. honestly, people were saying that they fleeced the Raiders on this, and I'm not going to lie, from their perspective, you can see why they make the move. I mean, Bennett has got a lot of question marks, don't get me wrong. Like, he had a fine year in 2023, but nothing too crazy. And then in 2024, honestly, he was looking to be on better trajectory, but did miss 7 games last season due to injury. So he didn't really get to flash his full potential. With an Eagles defense that is as strong as they currently are, and the fact that you already have Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell as the 2 main guys in that cornerback room, to have Bennett for death and get even younger at the cornerback position is a win for them. Obviously, he's not going to come right in and replace the overall production that Darius Slay Jr. had, and he's not going to account for that disparity in experience at all. But he does have a lot of upside at this point of time. And the Eagles defense, especially with some of the players that they had last season, they have proven that you don't have to be the greatest, I should say, or most desired free agent in the world. Or you don't even have to be the most highly respected player on your former team. If you are exposed to that unit in Philadelphia, they're going to do everything they can to completely turn your career around. I mean, look at what Zach Bond was able to do last season. I was somewhat consistent for the Saints, but wasn't regarded as a truly elite linebacker. And then he gets into Philadelphia and is seriously up for Defensive Player of the Year conversations while being one of the best, if not, you could argue, the best middle linebacker in the league last year. Now, I'm not saying that Bennett is going to take that same trajectory, but he is going to be a solid player at potentially the number 3 cornerback slot on this defense. And when you look at them moving on from Thomas Booker IV as well, you kind of have to. I mean, yes, they did undergo some massive losses on the trenches by losing Josh Sweat and Milton Williams this offseason, but you still have a lot of younger defensive tackles like Jordan Davis and obviously Jalen Carter that show a tremendous amount of promise. Like, there's no disrespect to Booker IV, but if those 2 guys are on your defensive tackle position, and they also added Devontae Wyatt plays for the Packers. So let me correct myself before even saying that, right? But you have a steep amount of defensive tackles there. And then not to mention, you go out and you draft Ty Robinson from Nebraska in the NFL draft. The kind of weight that he has sitting in the middle of a defense and being ready to swallow up pretty much any backfield player that tries to run through him. He is going to be an elite run stopper, already coming in with way more potential than Booker IV would have at this point. Because it feels like he's been moved around consistently. And the Eagles just have a lot of great talent and promise at that position already. As young as Booker IV is, he just ain't going to get the reps with this team. So it was smart for the Eagles to offload him and get back a solid depth piece at corner. But the Raiders, even though they probably lose this trade, given the fact that their cornerback room now looks totally different. I mean, they've lost Jack Jones. They lost Nate Hobbs. It's been a rough offseason for them on that front. But getting Thomas Booker IV back is kind of a win. I don't necessarily know whether or not he's going to be that good. But what I do know is this. With you losing Christian Wilkins potentially and voiding his contract, you don't have a lot of good defensive tackle options right here. Maybe this could be a situation where Thomas Booker, the fourth, just needed a change of scenery in some way. Maybe with the reps, he can actually become a solid defensive tackle for that team, because they need it in some fashion. I mean, all he's looking for at this point is opportunity. In both of the seasons in which he did play, because he missed the entire 2023 season due to injury, he's started in just a game per season. So, obviously, it goes both ways. You have to actually show a tremendous amount of potential for a team to take more consideration as to how many reps they give you on a week-to-week basis. That's fair. But at the same time, you're just going through an entire career that consistently and not even seeing the field all that much. Of course, you're not going to be able to get into a rhythm. And if the Raiders situation stays the same, he's going to get a whole lot of action. And then we'll really be able to see whether or not the deal to pick him up was worth it. But hey, it is a solid move for the Eagles to make. And the Raiders, only time will tell how it pans out for them. It really could. Just needs to get the reps, learn the system, and showcase what exactly he can do. And again, if he doesn't really contribute all that well, then the Raiders don't really lose much of anything from this. I mean, both of these players are on rookie scale deals at this point. And it just wouldn't really make too much of a difference. Like, neither one of them were up for any major payday at all. So it's not going to cost you either way. You could afford to bring in Booker the fourth and get rid of Bennett, truly. It does not make a difference whatsoever. But no, the Raiders, if that can happen, it'll just be another example of the kind of promise that this team as a whole could show in the upcoming season. Another player with a tremendous amount of promise that'll probably miss some time due to both injury and, I guess, in a way, a loss of reps is 49ers running back Isaac Guerendo, because he is going to miss a few weeks due to injury. And that is certainly unfortunate. It's definitely going to leave a little bit of a hole in that 49ers offense, because, yes, Christian McCaffrey is coming back. He's going to carry a lot of the workload, and we already know that. That has been very much proven in his entire time there. And when he's healthy, he has played up to that standard. But obviously, he missed all of last year. And that year, especially when you look at the 49ers running back core, man, they were so depleted. Like, Guerendo, at this point, offers them an opportunity, a vessel as a direct backup to Christian McCaffrey right now. Because Jordan Mason got hurt last season and is now no longer with the team. He's a Minnesota Viking. In came Isaac Guerendo, doing pretty solid work in the reps that he did get. I mean, he had 84 rushes for 420 yards last season to go along with 15 receptions and 152 receiving yards. Pretty solid all-around back. But he also ended up getting hurt at the tail end of the season. So now the 49ers are in another interesting predicament, because you don't want to keep re-aggravating Christian McCaffrey's injury, especially with no contingency plan. Like, an ideal situation would be to have Guerendo there and healthy to alleviate some of McCaffrey's burden. That is how this should optimally be going. But given those complications, that's not how it's going to end up. You got to balance that, or again, risk not getting the most out of Christian McCaffrey. And the way this offense is constructed, with him being the best offensive player you have outside of a J1 Jennings, and being your most talented skill player, let's keep it a stat. Again, Pearsall could be good, and Jennings did have a good season last year. But this is Christian McCaffrey we're talking about. Again, a top 2 or 3 running back when he is healthy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And with a weapon like that, you want to be able to get as much out of him as you can. It's going to be a struggle for those first few weeks, though, depending on how long this lasts. And certainly going to hurt Brock Purdy a little bit as well. I mean, obviously he took a step back last season due to injuries all over the team, quite frankly. But let's be honest, I mean, the way it looks, he had his best level of success in the NFL when Christian McCaffrey was by his side in 2023. By far his most successful season. When talking about the fact that he was one of the more elite quarterbacks in the league, when you look at the metrics and look at all these different numbers, and also being able to make a deep run, getting into the Super Bowl, and getting within just a few drives of a potential victory in the big game. I mean, we all know how that game ended up going. They were not that far off from winning. But, just timely plays on the opposite side kind of screwed them over. And at that point, what are you going to be able to do about that, right? But again, I say all that to say, again, Guerendo is a solid player. He is 25 at this point, so, obviously that is a player with fresher legs in that running back core. And the way that they run their offense, typically with Kyle Shanahan being the head coach, is more of a run-by-committee system. Even when they had running backs rather, like Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert producing at elite levels, it was by committee. Again, McCaffrey is definitely going to see a higher percentage of reps in that backfield and pretty much all over the field. But Guerendo would at least alleviate some of that if he was healthy. And you desperately need that after McCaffrey missed the entire year last year. Had to get multiple surgeries as well just to get right. You don't want a repeat of that again. So whatever you got to do to ensure that Isaac Guerendo can recover quickly and fully from this injury, you better get down to it. You don't have other backup plans like that. We already know. The Browns would sign Tyler Huntley to at least put up a fight for the starting quarterback position. Man, I'm not convinced by this. This just adds to the amount of craziness that has gone on in that Browns quarterback room since they were reestablished in 1999. I kid you not. It was already bad enough that Kenny Pickett was brought in the first place and then obviously gets hurt. That's obviously unfortunate. But even if he was healthy, could we really ensure that he was going to be a good quarterback in that system? Stefanski has done as best as he can with pretty much every quarterback that has come through that organization in just the past few years. So maybe, but that's still just a looming hypothetical over that franchise right now. And why do you need that at this moment? Like, the Browns, are always in this kind of situation. And it's just never gone well for them. Even the slightest glimmer of hope goes to shreds when you really think about it. And then after Kenny Pickett gets hurt, you think the solution to the problem, because it was looking like Kenny Pickett was somehow going to be the starting quarterback coming out of this offseason. You think that the solution is to have Tyler Huntley fighting for it? Yes, he did get a Pro Bowl alternate nod in 2022, but let's be honest, every single game that this man has started in, he has been awful, to say the least. He literally, as much as people joke about it, this man, Tyler Huntley, literally has a single read and will do everything in his power to stare that read down to the point where the defender inevitably picks up on it and something goes awry on the play. It could be an interception. It could be a fumble. You pick your poison at this point. Tyler Huntley has probably done it all since he's entered the NFL. He is a good backup. Don't get me wrong. He's a good backup and performs best in that role. But entrusting him with any opportunity to start would further derail the Browns quarterback room. Now, yeah, it would be pretty impossible to do that to a quarterback room that consists of so much money in dead cap space. But that is exactly what would happen. And it's just unnecessary. Like, I'd rather you just give it to one of the younger guys at this point. And Joe Flacco, even with him being older, again, at least he has enough familiarity with the team, I guess. Being there in Cleveland for a half season and being able to take them to the playoffs. Like, he's got that system down pat at this point. So even if you wanted to start him, fine. Because I'm watching these shows and they mention that DeShone Kizer was the very last Browns quarterback to be a rookie and start on opening day. And we know how DeShone Kizer's career went. So maybe having a younger guy enter on day one of the season and try to accomplish something, maybe that ain't the best course of action if history is anything to go off of. I mean, like, seriously, DeShone Kizer was just fucking terrible. But you'd think Tyler Huntley would outperform any of those options? You have to be honest with yourself. Absolutely not. Now, again, it's not really a heavily binding contract. You're just trying to make sure that you have enough competition in there. I get it. But if they're actually thinking this is a play to make for him to potentially start, like, please reconsider. Please reconsider. The Bucs would sign Teddy Bridgewater to a short-term deal to back up Baker Mayfield. It's a solid move. You know, he can be a pretty good mentor off the bench, and that's been proven. Even though he's still suspended at this point. At the very least, it does keep him in the area so that, hey, if he does manage to avoid further consequences, although they aren't really deserved, but if he avoids all of that extra buzz in this situation, he could return, hypothetically, and continue to coach those guys at Miami Northwestern once again. Definitely gonna have to travel some miles. I mean, that's no easy trip from Tampa to Miami, but, you know, he would be in the area at least. And I think that's all that those people would be asking for. And honestly, when you think about this from the Bucs' perspective, I don't know what that means for Kyle Trask. That would be very interesting to see what goes down with him in this situation. Maybe they do keep him, and Bridgewater becomes the third string quarterback in this case. Hell, for all we know, preseason games are set to begin tonight. So if anything, maybe Teddy Bridgewater actually gets reps in a preseason game and can showcase some of his talent that he might still possess at this point. That would be pretty cool. Nate Hobbs would get knee surgery. That is certainly tough for the Packers to confront. I'm not going to lie to you. Getting him in free agency was one of the best moves they could have made, honestly. Given how their cornerback room has shifted completely in just a single offseason with letting Jair Alexander go. And obviously having reasonable questions surrounding what Keyshawn Nixon can provide to this core. Hobbs has proven himself, despite how bad the Raiders have been for seasons now, even though they show promise. He could legitimately establish himself as a number one corner on that roster. He has the space to do it. He has all the opportunity in the world now. But having to undergo a setback like that could hinder that. You definitely hate to see it. You hope that it doesn't affect his availability for the season and that he can get the time he needs to rest up from it. Because once he's healthy, I think he's in for a pretty good season with this team. Truly. As for another player, Anthony Barr is set to officially retire. That news is actually conveyed via his foundation, which is pretty interesting. I don't think you always see that. But, it does make sense. I think there were rumblings about this last year. Because he was not signed in 2024 by anybody. At all. He hasn't played in the NFL since 2023, and he's consistently been moving around the NFL at this point. So I just don't know. He is definitely a player who has been established for quite some time. Those years from 15 to 18 were certainly a prime for him. But he hasn't really been all that resourceful since then. And when you're in a spot like that, again, you gotta recognize when that time is up. With the Vikings now having Grenard and Van Ginkel in that lineup, the need for Anthony Barr at that outside linebacker position as it stands, if he were to try to go back to the Vikings on a short-term deal, is basically null. There's no need for him on that team anymore. Now, he could, if he does formally retire, he could get a one-day deal with the team and retire that way. And that would be cool, man. He spent 9 years there in his first 8 NFL seasons there overall. It would be nice for him to retire in that setting, instead of having him go to another squad and potentially carry that out there. Nonetheless, he was able to do some pretty solid things in his career, being a pretty versatile rusher in this time. And again, to last in the NFL for 10 seasons when the average lifespan of an NFL career is far less than that, is impressive. So you got to give all respect to him. He could definitely still be involved with football or maybe something else in other ways. That could always happen. This isn't the total end of the road for him. But he may, if that report is true, call his career over. Simply put. I now have to provide a couple of follow-ups on some things I reported in the last NFL video, because pretty much as soon as I reported that, things ended up changing instantly. As on Friday, last Friday that is, the Bengals would actually get the deal in motion. Per both Adam Schefter and a CBS Sports article, the Bengals officially allowed the vote to pass on Friday for an agreement that grants them an 11-year extension in Hamilton County with their current stadium for June 2036. And as I detailed in the last video, there is also an option for them to extend this all the way to June 2046. It's a massive, massive deal. They're going to contribute their portion of $120 million to this overall project to make sure that renovations are being maintained throughout its entirety. And they, as I would imagine, have specifics, as outlined by the article here. Stadium upgrades include improvements to the club lounges, stadium suites, concessions, and scoreboards. End quote. There's probably a lot more that goes into it as well, but that's just the baseline level of what they'd be looking to improve in this time. It's definitely, at least, keeps them in this spot where many fans over the course of the past 25 years or so have been accustomed to. You can't really say that about the Browns right now, and this same report just details how bad it is getting in Cleveland for pretty much all parties at this point, since they're opting to take a different direction. You don't want to have that happen in both Ohio cities. And Cincinnati, this move ensures that they will not have to deal with that for quite some time, maybe ever, which is very huge for just the sake of fanhood, I should say. Like, you gotta look at this on a much bigger scale than just the business aspect. Like, damn, like that would just decrease fan morale completely if they found out that the team was gonna leave the area. It would hurt so badly for them. So they're certainly excited, maybe a little bit confused about some of what goes into it, but definitely excited to have them here for that much time. The Commanders as well, as I mentioned in one of the last videos, would have their official August 1st vote with the DC City Council to determine whether or not they are going to take part in granting their redevelopment process for $3.8 billion of the RFK Stadium and its surrounding areas. And according to this CBS quote, that would pass. As this quote states, the Washington Commanders' plans for a new stadium on the old RFK Stadium site in Washington, D.C. took a major step forward on Friday as the D.C. City Council voted in favor with a 9-3 vote of the $3.8 billion redevelopment. It's the first of two votes on the matter, with the final vote still left to come on September 17th, but it's an indication that the city will approve the plans and the decades-long push to bring the Commanders back to the city will finally get done. So, that is another layer to this. They've gotten through the first wave, the major wave, in terms of actually having the city council on their side. Because, obviously, with a lot of the other stuff going around in the media cycle, that was not really in question, but still could have gone far left if those reports were actually confirmed to be true. Nevertheless, they stuck to their guns, and the Commanders and the city council are going to be working together to make quite an undeniable experience for most Commanders fans in the area, and even those who come to visit, with the amount of residential spaces that are going to come along with it, and the fact that they're trying to build recreation centers and other playing areas for kids and stuff like that on top of redeveloping the stadium. It's going to be a crazy, crazy complex around there. And I honestly can't wait to see how it turns out. Again, like I said, that's just a special thing to be able to bring that back and revive that in a way. Where, so many DC residents of the past got so accustomed to watching Commanders football in that stadium, especially in the glory days. I mean, shit, that's why I haven't reported on this sort of trend in the NFL all that much. But, of course, naturally, they're going through the cycle on a year-to-year basis where they introduce jerseys that the teams are going to wear for the upcoming season, or even debut some new ones, like the fact that Nike rivalry jerseys are coming. And, from what I hear, they're going to look pretty damn good, although they haven't been unveiled yet. But you also had the Commanders earlier in the summer bring back some older uniforms of the past to rehash those glory days. I think they called them something along those lines as well. So they know what they're getting themselves into here. And they're willing to fully lean into it. You gotta respect that. Now, there's a ultimate vote, I should say, as that quote alluded to come on the 17th. But honestly, if they can get through this major wave, because that's literally the initiating step towards everything. If they can get that done, I have no doubt that they can get this next vote done and confirm in favor of the overall move. But any number of things can happen in a month and some change. They should be fine. They should truly be fine. They're continuing under this new ownership group of Harris and Magic Johnson to take steps in the right direction. And again, with what success they were able to find last season, they now have expectations. And what better way to see those potentially be fulfilled than in that space? Be truly something special if they could recapture that element there. And I think that's what they're in it for. The Rams would sign Kyren Williams to a 3-year, $33 million contract extension. And it feels like, honestly, if you ask some people in the NFL, because they believe that he is one of the best running backs in the league, just straight up. If you think that belief is true as well, then you might see an $11 million per year deal as a little bit of an underpay. But at the same time, this is just a supplementary contract to his rookie scale deal. So I don't think it's as crazy as you would expect. Like, his production in his first few NFL seasons does speak for itself. Like, he's been a workhorse for them over the last 2 years. Although I wouldn't particularly expect it. He's gotten back-to-back 1,100-yard rushing seasons, along with 12 touchdown and 14 touchdown campaigns back-to-back, en route to a Pro Bowl appearance and an All-Pro second-team nod in 2023. He also got consideration for Offensive Player of the Year last year. And he just seems to be taking those steps into potential superstardom. But again, I do have to question, given that he is 5'9", I don't know how they would consistently want to utilize him like a workhorse. I don't know if they want to get into that territory as much as they have been. I'm not going to lie. Like, is he really going to be able to stay all that durable? You have to question that. And I mean, I guess, granted, that happens enough with these running back contracts. I mean, because they always still just consider the lifespan of a running back to be way shorter than most other positions in the NFL. So that does hurt Kyren Williams to an extent, but all he has to do is just keep on doing what he's been doing. If he can continue to showcase that elite play, I mean, it's going to feel like an underpay, and then you'll be able to give him a contract that pays him way more while still having him be on the lower end of some of the highest value running back contracts in the league. Like, they're in a good spot. Jordan Addison would be officially suspended for the first 3 games of the upcoming NFL season. I mean, once they made it clear that suspension or, I guess, potential punishment from the NFL in their own independent investigation of the matter was made to be a potential case, man, you could imagine that something like this would probably go down at that point. So this shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone. But it is, like I said, once that happened, it is going to hurt the Vikings tremendously. I mean, their game against the Bears could be okay, but, man, you, in the next couple of games after that, you have the Falcons and the Bengals back to back. Like, it would give you a great advantage to be as stacked as possible. Even if the Bengals defense rather is fucking garbage, let's be completely honest, with no real signs of improving all that much, unless their young players step it up. Still, it helps to have another receiver out there that can take away some of the focus that Justin Jefferson will certainly get in these ball games. We know he's going to get double teamed into oblivion. That is what it is. But that pressure just becomes a little easier to bear if you have another dynamic weapon in Jordan Addison out there alongside him to complement his services. But again, that's just the consequence of being as reckless as you can possibly be in a public space. It just can't happen. Again, you gotta learn from it. And, if you're a Vikings fan, I mean, he will be back when the Steelers face off against them in Dublin, Ireland. So that could be a pretty fun return. I'm not gonna lie to you. And I mean, hell, they got back-to-back overseas games facing off against the Browns on October 5th in London. So, even if Addison can't make those first 3 ball games, that gives him even more time to rest up and potentially makes the transition over to those countries from the U.S. a little easier, I would personally say. Alright, per a CBS Sports article and a clarification on the matter from the NFLPA, per Adam Schefter, the NFL would ban teams from providing players with smelling salts and other ammonia products because they didn't really find a connection between smelling salts being as effective as they're marketed to be. Also, they cited in multiple articles here that, as this quote states here, ammonia inhalers had the potential to mask certain neurological signs and symptoms, namely some signs of a concussion, end quote. And when you're banning a team from providing them with this supposed stimulant, I can understand why they would do it. Because that just adds to the notion that the league isn't really doing everything they need to be doing to handling the concussion problem. That just adds to that. That's a suspicion that some people tend to have. And that does make it a little harder to grasp, because why would you not, in those cases, take a player out of the game just because they're using smelling salts if they aren't proven to be that effective? It's not that worth it at all. Like, there's still a heavy amount of risk that comes with that. And a team bearing that responsibility doesn't bode all that well for the league from a public standpoint. It simply doesn't. So they want nothing to do with that. They want their clubs to have absolutely nothing to do with that. And I guess per that report, they're going to stop allowing these clubs and other, I guess, members within the organization to give players access to those things. Now, it's not necessarily going to stop the players from purchasing these products and using them themselves. That's kind of the point of this. All of the responsibility in this case is going to be handed over to the players. They can still purchase them in their own time and use them on the sidelines, but they have to come out of pocket for it. And if certain things happen after they use it, or with them using it, it's their responsibility to bear, not the organization's. That's where the clarification had to come in. Because people were confusing it and saying that essentially the players couldn't use it anymore. Even I thought so at a certain point, but with them making that clear, it's like, yeah, you can, at your own risk. Let's see. The Chargers would sign Keenan Allen to a 1-year, $8.52 million contract, making his return to the team and the city that, at least for a little bit, he once called home after their move to Los Angeles from San Diego during his early NFL career with the team. You know, you gotta respect it, man. It is just that era where teams are pulling this off with players. Again, I don't know where exactly he's gonna line up on their depth chart, but he'd probably serve as a number 2, sometimes number 1 receiver alongside Matt McConkey. And man, I can't even imagine what type of game McConkey is going to get from this man, bro. I can't even imagine what will happen there. He's already familiar with an extent to Quentin Johnston as well. And honestly, Johnston, maybe he did take a little bit of a stride last season, but he still needs a lot of work. He is heavily inconsistent. And to have that veteran presence back in that locker room, being able to guide him through this time in his NFL career, is going to be beneficial to him as well. So he could also see an increase in potential this season. And, hey, the Chargers can once again, barring anything stupid on the part of Greg Roman, they could become a dynamic passing offense once more with this wide receiver core. You can balance it out as well, having a Marion Hampton be the lead running back potentially, if he shapes up to be as dynamic of a prospect as everyone believes. And speaking of pretty crazy stuff, it appears that the NFL is doing everything in their power to get ahead of the curve. Let's just put it simply like that, especially when looking at the fact that they would sign what I would just say to be a merger with the ESPN network. Because let's just say that a lot of content produced by the league is going to be distributed to ESPN platforms. As this quote states from an article from CBS News, the NFL announced Tuesday night that it has entered into a non-binding agreement with ESPN. Under the terms, ESPN will acquire NFL Network, NFL Fantasy Football, and the rights to distribute the Red Zone channel to cable and satellite operators, and the league will get a 10% equity stake in ESPN. Now, apparently the article also goes on to say that they still need a final agreement and approval from NFL owners, but the move, as it stands, is pretty much set in stone. And to be honest, with some of what ESPN, some of the things that they've been doing over the last few years, you could kind of see this coming. I mean, there was even something that said that this had been in the works and that they had been talking on and off about this potential merger since 2021. Think about every major development from both the ESPN side and the NFL side since that year. You obviously, at the top of it all, had the major media rights deal for the NFL and everything of the sort within the past few years. Also getting it in with the NBA over the past few years, as well as they also try to protect their brand and revenue stream. That would be the perfect model for the NFL to follow. Or look at the fact that ESPN, in that stretch of 2023, underwent all those layoffs across multiple departments in that organization, especially when you look at some of their on-air talent. Maybe there is not a one-to-one correlation there, but it certainly freed up space for other people to come in and make room for them to have this move be incorporated. Just think about that. Or look at how the NFL has been so willing to tap into all of these different streaming services over the past few years. Amazon getting the rights to these games. Peacock being set to broadcast at least a playoff game now in this day and age. And then obviously their recent deal with Netflix. Like, the game is changing completely. And it seems like both sides have a mutual understanding of that. With a lot of their patterns over just the past 4 years showing that they're willing to collaborate together exclusively at this point. And I mean, it does make sense because when you look at it, TV is kind of evolving in this sense. Live TV, just straight up live cable TV, is kind of undergoing a shift right now. You don't see many people having or willing to acquire services for live TV. They would much rather consume television through different streaming services and other apps on their phones, on their computers, or maybe on their television screens. And the NFL Network, according to a video that I've been watching from Microphone, had essentially been the trendsetter for a while. They've been waning over the past few years as these other consumers select other options. What this move to ESPN does is consolidate and condense a lot of the NFL content, a good chunk of the NFL content at least, on a per season basis into one space, because ESPN is also, according to multiple articles here, and even as they've stated themselves, is launching a direct-to-consumer app on August 21st of this year. Recognizing that the landscape in TV is changing right now, they're going to try to see what they can do when it comes to the streaming route. And it seems like when you are able to have all of the content from the ESPN family and a lot of the content from the NFL family and the NFL Network, it just makes it hard to miss for any NFL fan out there who is willing to dish out the money on a per year, per month basis to get pretty much anything they would need to consume in this space. Like, there are going to be situations where you're not going to be convincing everyone. But for most people, if you are a person that wants to utilize the ESPN app and get access to some of these NFL games and other ESPN content, I believe the launching price is like $30 a month. So if you want to view one thing, you're gonna get pretty much everything at that price. And that could be the strategy that other people try to use. But you have to understand this as well from a business perspective. A 10% equity stake. ESPN is still the worldwide leader in sports. Regardless of what you may think about some of their tendencies in the modern day, maybe you think they've taken a step back in some regard. Maybe you think that they've elevated their game in the past decade or so. They are still the worldwide leader in sports by a wide margin. And the NFL, regardless of what you think of them, they are by far the most profitable sports organization in the U.S. And maybe one of the largest in the world, if not the largest in the world. What better way to continue to capitalize on that success than advance your progress in the streaming landscape and not just be a company, not just exist in that specific industry, but dominate it like both of them have in general sports coverage and the sporting landscape for most of their existence, especially at the turn of the century. What better way to do that? Now, you're really hoping, with that kind of stake in the company, I don't know how much control they're going to have. I would assume that there's a fair balance. Obviously, Red Zone's going to be distributed to ESPN. NFL will still produce it. The NFL might have a say in some of the shows that could be paired up with being broadcast on ESPN and things like that. There's probably going to be a mutual, kind of agreement in that regard. But I mean, hey, it does make for a pretty interesting situation. And again, in that aspect, even though people are going to have their own opinions about this, it is genuinely a smart business move. It keeps them at the center of attention. Truly. At the center of it all. You can't ask for much more than that at this time. You can't do it. And, I mean, I don't know. Like, you gotta pay the big bucks if you're gonna get access to everything. And here comes the con. You will still not get access to everything, because this is still a big problem that some of these streaming services have. Now, again, you're going to have a lot of them be their own independent bodies. But you're not going to be able to find a large number of people worldwide. There are still going to be cases where individuals struggle to attain a reasonable amount of access to every single thing in the NFL. It's just going to be impossible if you don't have the funds to pay for these subscription services. That is going to ail so many people. It is as simple as that. Like, yes, if you do get it, you'll obviously be able to get a lot of ESPN content. I mean, hell, as this quote says right here, the enhanced streaming service goes beyond what is offered by ESPN Plus, which will be known as the Select plan moving forward. The full ESPN app will include ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, SEC Network, ACC Network, ESPN News, ESPN Deportes, in addition to ESPN on ABC, ESPN Plus, ESPN3, SEC Network Plus, and ACC Network X. I do not know exactly what that stands for, but that's a lot of different ESPN shit. If you get that, you're living good. But you're still gonna be in a bit of a... You're still gonna be in a tricky situation. Because even when those games on the NFL Network are done, they also have a clause that states the NFL is going to get access to some of the holiday games that'll show up on NFL Network from time to time. So some of the Saturday action that they've had on, like, I guess, Christmas and around New Year's will be shown on ESPN. They'll get like 3 of those games and several other sorts of games from the NFL Network as well. So you're going to get a lot of NFL games per season, but not everything, because a lot of these other streaming services have their hands in the cookie jar as well. And you're going to have to, no matter what, whether you continue a full-on subscription or whether you just watch the NFL product broadcasted on the specific, I guess, service and then back out of a subscription only to re-enter it when the full NFL season is in motion, you're still going to be paying an expensive amount of money just to watch all of the NFL games that are shown on ESPN, all of the NFL games that are going to be shown on Peacock, all of the NFL games that are going to be shown on Netflix, all of the NFL games that are going to be shown on Amazon, and so on and so forth. Not to mention, if you're going into some of these games, watching them for the purposes of gambling, you're going to be spending a shit ton of money there as well. It is a lot. It will be a lot to keep that up. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they are willing to adjust in that case. Because obviously the first year is going to be a test run. And I can assure you right now, it's going to be a struggle for most people to keep up with that. Like, you're already talking about spending $300 or so a year for ESPN services. That's not accounting for how much money it would take to spend for a yearly or even monthly subscription for some of these other services out here just to watch NFL games. Just to watch NFL games. We're not even talking about all of the other stuff that these streaming services provide. Maybe you want to watch a show or something. On Amazon, you would probably have to pay to get a subscription to a channel just to watch a show. Or rent or buy a movie. For Netflix, they got some other stuff coming, I believe, that serve as add-ons that make you spend even more money on the program. Hulu, same thing. Peacock, same thing. that could, if you don't have the means to make it happen, that could cripple somebody. Financially, I don't know. So it's going to be difficult to navigate that. But we'll see how they manage it. Because all the same, again, it keeps them in a pretty good spot. There are some people who do see it as a conflict of interest. Because obviously, the ESPN networks cover the NFL extensively. And so, honestly, I mean, shit, look no further than the collusion case. To have a 10% stake in the company could be very interesting in a case where some league-wide development happens that yields negative press. Like, the ESPN network would still have to do their job and talk about it. But the kind of language that they utilize could be altered in some cases. That is something that could happen. That's a possibility. Like, it doesn't make it to where they control the full narrative. But a situation like that, where you have them in a hypothetical situation correctly talking down on whatever the league as a whole was doing in this hypothetical situation, that would be a little weird, admittedly. Still, it keeps them very much in the spot of the most general attention a sport can get around the world, whether it be through TV ratings, whether it be through social media exposure, etc., etc. They're going to be at the top of this thing. You just hope that, again, both sides, because ESPN as well, in getting NFL Network and having access to it in a linear manner, they also have a tendency of altering different shows for the sole purpose of keeping in line with the visions of their brand, and it has ruined them at times. Along with some of their other products when it comes to some of these different shows and movies for Disney and Disney Plus. That is very clear. NFL Network, even if the viewership had been waning, is still viewed as a staple of NFL coverage. They're not just going to go out and acquire it for no reason and just cast it to the side. NFL Red Zone and Scott Hansen, one of the best experiences that NFL fans have had for decades now. And even they were crushed when they moved to actually showing ads. So if you're the NFL, you got to recognize that it's still a valued asset in this entire thing. You do not need to tinker with it any further. You got to allow them to do what it is that they do. Like, I know you want to get your hand in everything. That's clear, but you can't fuck around with this here. You have to give them the space and give Hansen the space to do what they do best. Or else this just is not going to work. And at the end of the day, it certainly helps them gain a massive amount of profit. Like, I won't get into all the numbers and stuff. That is for other, individuals who work with finance to do. But they are going to see a massive increase in profit. They've already seen it through their projections. And I can imagine that in time, that's going to be made very clear. All right. But yeah, some of the other, I guess, NFL owners have had their own say about it. Like, honestly, Robert Kraft had a pretty interesting quote about it, and I'll just state it here. Quote, "I think we've hooked up with the best partners we can have," Kraft said. "That'll help us That'll help expose us to more homes, more of an international audience. Strategically, we have to grow our salary cap and can only do that by, if we want to keep labor peace, we have to grow our audience. This transaction helps us to do that. End quote. Yes, it does very much affect the salary cap. As these, you pair up the media rights with this acquisition, you're going to see a massive boom. Like I said, they're already undergoing that right now. So the players are certainly going to get an even greater amount of money if that's what they're pursuing. But to cite labor peace and cite that you're keeping labor peace, like, are you not aware of the fact that you niggas were just found guilty of collusion? Are you not aware of the fact that the president, the standing president, had to resign? In comes an interim director to handle this responsibility up until they find a president? All of this change in the Players Association right now, and you think there is labor peace? Along with all of the other shit that has come out about what Howell did during his tenure. You think that's labor peace? There is a clear break in trust and connection between the owners and the players right now, and the other individuals in the NFL that represent the league. There's a clear disconnect there right now. What peace is there? Truly. Like, you can't claim that. Like, we're seeing some of that crumble right before our very eyes. Like, money isn't the solution to all of your problems. Like, you literally fucked these niggas over and were found guilty of doing so. I don't know how you find peace in that at all. That's not okay. But yeah, growing the salary cap, increasing the team-by-team amount per season under this does help. And exposure to more homes does help. Because at the end of the day, like, when it comes to the shift towards streaming services, it's already been happening for a few different networks. And, you know, when it comes to sports now, it's a bit of an arms race. It helps them get so far ahead of the curve. It really does. Because even with the NBA making the move to Amazon, and I'm sure that many people will be excited to do that, at least for the people who are working there. I'm sure that many people will be excited to watch it, of course. NFL is still the top dog when it comes to the big four sports. And again, it's not even close when you look at how much revenue they pull on a year-to-year basis. So it is going to make sure that they retain that spot at the very least. I personally, again, I think the move is a smart one. Again, it does make it harder for people who cannot afford it to acquire it. It still does. That is the case with every streaming service, though. That is just the shift that the TV landscape is taking. And it's just a result of the fact that people do not watch live television anymore. They just don't. For one reason or another, that is how it has gone over the past, you can say decade, you could say 5 years. Look at any timetable. It's just decreasing on a year-to-year basis. Now, it's not to say that they're going to completely, go extinct like some of the other things have. Again, you look at how Sports Illustrated had to switch completely to online services after being in print for so long. I don't think we're going to get to a point like that per se, but the times are changing, and these moves just reflect that. You can't really blame them for doing whatever it is they can to take advantage of it. As for some other NFL news, there's just a slew of injuries here. Jaycee Horn would miss a practice yesterday after getting in a car accident. I don't know if he was found to be injured at all, but maybe there were other personal matters surrounding it that he had to tend to, and as a result, he couldn't make his way to the stadium, obviously. Matthew Stafford would also be dealing with a back injury, and that could hurt his stock for the season. He apparently hasn't been getting practice reps all off season during training camp. And then you are dealing with this. That's not a good combo. Hopefully he gets better from it. But, oh man, that's just not a good look. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson would also be carted off of the field with a right leg injury just today. Now, I don't know what the full extent of it looks like. Hopefully it is nothing too severe, but anytime you have to be carted off with your whole leg being injured in some fashion, it doesn't really turn out to be the best. So hopefully all those people recover from their injuries. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.